Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, 8 new homies in the Big 12. We're ranking them today. Also, hearing from Kenny Perry on his stable of Texas Tech running backs, and we set our clocks to Tahj time. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, it's great to be back with you again, man, and a whole lot to get into on today's episode as we wrap up what has been a busy week. We got Red Raider football to get to up ahead, which includes one of the more interesting conversations positional group-wise that I think there is to have on either side of the ball. That deals with Kenny Perry and his running backs. We'll hear from Coach Perry. We'll talk Tahj Brooks and company, because those are names you're probably going to have to get to know without Sir Roderick Thompson now in the mix. We'll get to that coming up, but also wanted to close out the week, Chris, reflecting, taking some time to look inward. And by inward, I mean inside the Big 12 Conference. Now that you are sitting where you're sitting with 16 members, you've got 8 new additions. You and I thought this would be just a damn swell time to rank these some bucks. Who doesn't like a nice list in the offseason? And we're running out of offseason time, so we kind of figured we got to get this list in before we're too busy with football to do it. And Chris, I was glad to see you and I differed a little bit on these rankings. Now, we took an overall big picture kind of view. So this isn't just the football program. I really had to hammer Chris about not just concentrating on women's volleyball rankings. For some reason, he was entirely caught up in that. This is big picture rankings. So let us know how you feel in the YouTube comments. And away we go, Chris. Are you ready to reveal this bad boy?
Sign me up. Let's do it.
Here's what the list looks like for Chris and myself when it comes to new Big 12 members. I'll run mine down I'll run mine down first. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it here on the screen. But number 1, I went with BYU. Number 2, Arizona. Number 3, Utah. Number 4, Colorado. Number 5, Central Florida. Number 6, Arizona State. Number 7, Cincinnati. Number 8, Houston. Chris Level went Arizona number 1, Utah number 2, Central Florida number 3, BYU number 4, Colorado number 5, Arizona State 6, Cincinnati 7, and the Cougars of Houston number 8. Chris, you and I are matching there in the top 5. We got a little bit different order, however. And now that I'm seeing Arizona with their blue blood basketball program at the top of your list, I'm feeling maybe a little foolish. I don't have them at the top of my list. I went with BYU with Arizona number 2. But tell me, what is it about the Wildcats that has them at the top of your ranking?
Yeah, you're going to have to fill me in on the W before Houston or whatever. Yeah, okay. I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay. Yeah, I just thought, one, Arizona's move here, what it signified, because they were really the one that broke apart everything else, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that the basketball component combined with them, I think them really wanting to be in this league makes them, gives them some street cred in this deal too, because it's been widely reported they had been engaged. And, look, Colorado was the first one to jump. I certainly understand that. I just don't know if Colorado brings as much to the table. But I think that what Arizona brings, because, one, their football hasn't been great, okay? But they have been good in the past, like Colorado. But they bring one of the premium basketball programs in the country into the mix. And I just think the totality of that, along with kind of, the Phoenix, Arizona market, if you will. I just, again, there's no right answers here, but I gave them a slight edge, and I went with Utah just because Utah is the school that's, they've recently won the Pac-12 multiple times.
They got hardware.
This is a big boy football program right now. Now, again, we can get into what Central Florida's done in recent years, what Cincinnati's done in recent years, because they've certainly been big boy as well. But Utah, they get after it. And if Kyle Whittingham stays there, they'll continue to be extremely relevant nationally. Go look at the preseason top 25 poll this year. Guess what? You're going to see Utah. So anyway, I could keep going, but I just think that's how I saw it. There's no right or wrong answers here, but
well, there is one right answer, and we both got it right at number 8. Anyone looking at the screen can see. But I like your argument, and certainly Utah. And here's the deal: Arizona, Utah, 2 and 3 on my list. So we're both thinking about them very similarly and in a very high way. But I can't get around BYU as like Notre Dame light. And it may be very light, but
fair. Yeah.
The resource base, the support base, the history, and the fact that they have existed for some time now as an independent, and I would say fairly successfully. I know they're not the most relevant on, say, a college football radar or things like that year in and year out, but fairly successfully. Maybe I'm overestimating that, Chris, but I really feel like, this is one of the things that the Pac-12 screwed up once upon a time, is turning their nose up at BYU and what could have been a huge and probably fruitful addition for that league. And when the Big 12 Conference was able to make the first 4 additions, I thought, no question, and I don't think you'll disagree with me, BYU far and away is probably the most capable of what was added. But I still even think among these final 8 that we now have to consider, that's why I went with the Cougars, is just, I guess, the sheer size of what they represent whenever they enter the league.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the tougher places to play in football. I think they're always going to be, Kalani Sitake has been really good for several years now. I think they feel a bit slighted in kind of how they've been perceived in some ways coming into the league football-wise, because they have been pretty good. They play a Power 5-ish schedule every year. And, and it is a bit of a national, appeal to it. They've got their own TV network and all those things. I just, I guess I didn't view them in some ways because I guess I docked them points. How about this? A bit difficult to work with. You're going to have to avoid the whole Sunday thing. There's some. It's not an ideal. Just like, hey, man, we're good to go. There's a reason why they've kind of been an independent for a while.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and so, but anyway, I do think, because this is going to be one of the Tech's toughest road games this year, is going up to Provo.
Yep.
So, and again, we're looking at this from a completely, all kinds of reasoning and all that. But it's crazy to me, though. 2 years ago, it's crazy to look at that list and say these are all Big 12 members. That's what's wild to me.
This is kind of shocking for some, probably, who are taking this in big picture for the first time. Man, when you're in Provo, you usually have like the best view on the sideline calling Texas Tech football games. That may be the one game you have the worst view in the stadium, because I don't know if you'll see the beautiful mountain range outside the stadium, but that's going to be one of the most scenic spots in the Big 12, obviously, to take in a football game. Looking forward to maybe making that trip someday. Again, our top 5 include the same 5, just a little different order. So as for the other 2, Central Florida, Colorado. Now, I put Colorado 4, Central Florida 5. You've got the Knights at 3, UCF at 3, Colorado at 5. Slight edge for the Buffs to me, Chris, just because state school history in the Big 12. They got a national championship on the wall, and a real national championship on the wall, not a social media national championship, with all due respect to Central Florida. Look, I know where Central Florida is. I know where Orlando is. I know what kind of athletes they have got all around them. They also seem very, very enthusiastic and ready to compete. So that's why they're in that top 5. But the aforementioned reason is why I put the Buffs ahead of them. Chris, you're showing quite a bit of respect. You're going to make some friends in Orlando, I think, today. Central Florida at number 3 for you. So how did you kind of split those 2?
Yeah, I think I think UCF is somebody that is going to be extremely relevant immediately. I think they're recruiting at an extremely high level right now. They've got a big-time head coach that everybody is aware of. They've got, I think apparently it's one of the toughest places to play. Their fan base on Twitter is very opinionated and engaged. So yeah, I gave the salute to Central Florida. There is my next, just because I think that we have to remember, and again, I'm kind of contradicting myself when I have Arizona and their basketball program, their kind of blue-blooded basketball program at the top, and a big reason why. But we have to remember most of this stuff has to do with football and sustainability and brand recognition and all these different things. I mean, Central Florida has been on a roll, for quite a while, and it really hadn't mattered the head coach. I mean, and again, you can even look at the bottom of both of our lists, and Cincinnati and Houston, really, regardless of league, regardless of coach, that these are programs that just win. They're kind of like some of these. It's like that's how I always view Boise State. You know, Boise is just one of those programs. They just win every year. Doesn't matter who's coaching them. Doesn't matter what's going on. They just they win some years more than others. But there's a lot of programs like this. But Central Florida is certainly one for sure. But I like the market. I like Florida. I like that's where recruits are, speed is, and they've certainly made a dent in that market for sure.
And I guess it wasn't just number 8 that was actually a right answer, with the Cougars bringing up the rear, but maybe 6, 7, and 8, because you and I somehow were in lockstep with 6, 7, and 8. Arizona State, how embarrassing for you to be a Power 5 program all these years, and you're obviously in this bottom tier. Hey, Ray Anderson or whatever your name is, don't come to Lubbock either. Bearcats and Houston, look, obviously you've had some momentum as a program or as an athletics department, but you're doing it in a different neighborhood now. So much like Central Florida, who's had even more momentum, we'll see if they can take it to the next step and sustain that success now in the Big 12 Conference. But let us know how you see it, agreement or disagreement, in the YouTube comments. That's how we see the lay of the land. Coming up next, we're getting to Red Raider football. We're going to hear from Texas Tech running backs coach and special teams coordinator Kenny Perry talking about his stable, which has got a help wanted sign hanging on the outside of it right now, because you're trying to replace Sir Roderick Thompson. He, along with Tahj Brooks, a bang punch a season ago. Brooks is back. We'll also get to Coach Perry on Taj time up ahead. But first, let's get to not only Taj, but Cameron Valdez and some more that we'll see factor into that position this year. That's next on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. And if you want a championship team, you need championship parts that fit together just right. And it's no different with your vehicle. Every part's got to fit exactly right. And that's where eBay Motors comes in. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure every part you need fits exactly right the first time, every time. Just head on over to ebaymotors.com, add your ride info to the My Garage portal, and look for the green check to know the part is going to be an exact fit, or you're getting your money back. No risk. In sports, life, or anything in between, confidence is going to be the name of the game. And that's exactly what you're going to have when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, and with the right parts guaranteed, you're going to be back in the game and on the road in no time. So get the right parts, the right fit, and at the right prices on ebaymotors.com now. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech a part of your day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you got this podcast, so you never miss an episode. Appreciate all those saddling up, calling it good on the test drive, hopping in with a YouTube subscription, and joining the Locked On Texas Tech fam damnly. Chris, let's pivot to Red Raider football and take a listen to Texas Tech running backs coach Kenny Perry, who you and I were talking off the air. Kind of gives you a feel of Joey McGuire 2.0, because these guys are as tight as it gets for many, many years now. And you feel some similar energy. I think even some similar speech patterns possibly here or there. Kenny Perry is a lot of fun to talk to, and I would say a Lubbock celebrity in his own right. And he's presiding over one of the more interesting positional groups either side of the ball heading into this year, because you got a whole lot of production you're trying to replace in one Sir Roderick Thompson. And you've still got a very capable lead dog in Tahj Brooks. So you're wondering who you can pair with Brooks to really make an impact. And here are a few names that you're going to hear mentioned from Kenny Perry here that you're going to want to hang on to and get familiar with, because you will hear them much more often as we get into the season. Here is Kenny Perry on that stable of running backs.
Last year we had a great 1-2 with Sir Roderick and Tahj, and so we needed that speed guy. Cameron's had a great he's had a great year. You know, he's totally changed his life, his body, everything, his education, everything that he needed to do, he's done for this team. And so, you know, now we got to find that third guy. Last year, you know, with Nehemiah and XY, the guys that played running back, you know, we've got depth. We can move guys, but we want to have a true third guy. So between Bryson Donnell and Anquan and Jamari, you know, he got here a little late. He's got a ways to go, but Anquan's doing a lot of good things. You know, he's got a head that's the size of a Rottweiler, so that kind of helps too.
You know, this is one of those sneaky positions on this team where there's not a lot of proven experience. I mean, in fact, it's kind of glaring, actually. You know, Taj Brooks, we'll get to more in a second. Clear cut number one. We know he's going to factor in.
Yeah.
But after that, there's not a lot of I've done that before on this roster at the running back position, because it just doesn't exist. Cameron Valdez is, without a doubt, I think, in line to be kind of the partner, sidekick, backup Taj Brooks, however you want to phrase it. But he's got under 200 yards, you know, last year, and did it in brief stints just because of his injury situation. Yeah. And you hear them talking about a number 3 guy, but your number 2 guy really hasn't played a ton of college football. He just hasn't. You and I on this show, we've talked about Cameron a lot because we know what we think he can do. We know what the expectation is with him internally. And he's a bit different than what you've had. He's not blazing fast, but he's quicker than he is fast. And I think he's so good with his first step and kind of running style, one cut and go, that it gets him in the open field. But it's behind him, though. That's where really there's some intrigue, because I couldn't tell you the answer. You hear Kenny Perry, who I love, a great dude, man, and he's been dropping Rottweiler references and all these things. Anquan Willis was a guy from Wichita Falls, Ryder, I believe, that came in. I think there was some thought, man, he might end up being a linebacker for us. Well, it sounds like he's still at running back, okay, and doing pretty well. Bryson Donnell, a guy that pretty thick-legged kid from Tyler, bigger kid, again, hadn't done it, and people will tell you, this kid may be the toughest kid we have on our entire team, but he hasn't done anything at the college level yet. And he missed most of, I think, spring football with something. I can't remember. He got dinged up early on in spring ball, and so he missed the bulk of it. And then you have Jamari Davis, who's one of the new guys that has just showed up from a recruiting standpoint. And then you don't hear Kenny Perry, and that's who I would have thought he would have said. But I think Nehemiah Martinez may end up being your third back, because he did a lot of this in the spring and playing some slot, and then also playing some running back and kind of sharing that role. This is what he did in high school. But there's lots of options there. Bodies and depth is not a problem, but a proven depth is. And I think that's a big difference. And you'll hear in a second Kenny Perry talk about something relating to Taj Brooks that may ultimately break some tiebreakers there with who ultimately gets to be that third back and who doesn't.
Yes.
That's called a tease.
That's exactly right. And I just look, man, anybody that's considering a head as big as a Rottweiler to be a compliment is after my heart. So love you, Coach Perry. Love you, Coach Perry. Appreciate that. I'm looking at this group of running backs also in a picture I remember in the offseason, and I was thinking, well, who's the father that they've got on the roster this year? Because this one dude, and I think maybe it was Willis, but I may be mistaken. Is one of them a pretty physically imposing dude?
They're both I think Donnell is about 5'10", 220. Anquan Willis is 6 foot 220.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they both pack a lunch. I think that when you were signing like Anquan, because he missed most of his senior year last year because of a knee injury. I think it was mid to late September. And they stuck with him and all that. And I think there was just some thought, hey, man, there's a variety of things this kid could do. But I mean, he was by no means like guaranteed to like stay at running. And he still may not be. But I'm saying he's not ready to give that up yet. And the coaches are like not ready to kind of push that button yet. So it sounds like he's doing really, really well. Donnell, though, they're both very similar. You're just talking the same similar height. But what you're starting to see is that Tech's running backs, you don't have the 5'10", 185 pounders now. These guys are loaded. They're jacked up. They're tough. They're in between the tackles. But what you don't have amongst this group really is anybody that can just take off and see you. That's kind of something that's ultimately missing, I think, from the group as a total. But again, we'll get back to what Kenny Perry says, because that extra weight that plays into it big time.
Valdez speed's not quite in that category, or because I'm just viewing him that way, but maybe I'm viewing it in an overstated way.
He's really fast in a 20-yard box. Like like straight line speed or a long speed is not something he has. And what I mean by that is the longer he has to run, I don't want to say the slower he gets, but he's not going to run away from people. Sometimes, man, it's like,
I hear that too.
Yeah, that's right.
We all feel him on that.
Where he's really good is that he's good with his angles. He can get away from people, and he can get out in the open field because he's so quick and fast in space. And then, if you remember in the bowl game, he got tackled from behind, and the ball punched loose at the goal line.
You're right.
Touchdown.
Yep, I forgot about that.
And it was because Ole Miss, man, there's some dudes on that team that can flat scoot.
Yes, they do.
That's kind of what you're talking about. He is faster than most, okay? Yeah. He's not slow. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. However, he's not, when we think of like elite level speed, you're talking about guys that just, when they get in the open field, they just start running away from everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Yeah. That's not him. And I don't think there's a back on your team that really possesses that. But he also is very quick, though, and I think elusive. But he's not going to dance around. That's what also makes him good. He doesn't dance. He's very decisive and boom, boom, and then that's where he hits the hole and he's out. So,
gotcha.
We'll see kind of what it looks like, but very different than SaRodorick and Taj.
Let's take another listen to Coach Perry talking about his lead dog, Tahj Brooks, that he's going to let off the chain once again in 2023. And as Chris alluded to, Tahj Brooks, the complete package, and some of what you do when the ball is not in your hands or the play is not directed towards you is separating number one from number two, and number two from number three, and number three from, hey, do you want to go play linebacker? Here's what Chris is alluding to as described by Coach Kenny Perry. Here's what Chris is alluding to as described by Coach Kenny Perry.
He's been very productive, but the thing Taj does is he's such a great pass protector. That's the hardest thing in college, because you're recruiting high school running backs that are used to running and scoring. When you get to college, you got to protect in this offense or you can't play. And so he's such a great, protection. Then he can run. He's got great hands out of the backfield, and he's become such a great leader because he's been here for 4 years now. So he's doing a lot of great things that's going to help take us over the edge.
And I think obviously in recent days, Tahj Brooks has been named to the Doak Walker Award watch list. I think Kenny Perry spoke very glowingly about Tahj and just kind of who he's become. I think, his mind is right, his weight is right, his leadership is right. I just think he's really, because this is his last shot at this deal, and I think he's clearly the leader and the starter and all that at that group. But he touches on, Chad Scott, who I think actually is coaching running backs for Neil Brown in West Virginia now. I would always have long conversations with Chad Scott back when he was coaching like Eric Stevens here, a couple of guys way back in the day in that Tuberville era when Neil was the OC. But we would talk always a lot about pass protection, and he would kind of be like, watch this guy do it, then watch this guy do it. He goes, and now you'll understand why. Because I think I'd maybe even written something like, I don't understand why, it was probably some big time recruit or something that wasn't getting to play bunch and all that. And he was trying to teach me. He's like, just you watch this aspect, and this is why he's not getting to play. It has nothing to do with when we hand him the ball. It's like, because these days, running backs, if you're going to go tempo, they don't want to be able to have to take you off the field. They don't want to be able to be like, okay, we're subbing in, and then they're gonna hand it to him because he can't do anything else every time that he comes into the game. He's got to be able to stay in the game and pass block, catch it, run it, all those things. And that's the secret. And that's always like for high school kids, that's you hear Kenny Perry talking about it. It's not about toting the rock, man, or scoring touchdowns and everything. You better protect your quarterback because this is big boy stuff. And if you're timid with it, or if you can't do it well, it's hard for them to put you out there for long periods of time. You just haven't earned the right. And that's why, you want running backs that can do, that they check all three boxes. And Taj does that. I think Cameron has clearly started to get better at that aspect of his game. But that's ultimately, I guarantee you, that's ultimately going to decide who is third between Nehemiah Martinez or Bryson Donnell or Anquan Willis or Jamori Davis, all these other names. Who can I put out there that I don't have to stress out about, like, can they pick up a blitz or not? And catching it out of the backfield will certainly factor in as well. But that's and Taj is really good at it. I mean, who I mentioned earlier, like Eric Stevens, was phenomenal at it, and he was not the biggest guy. But that's always the best running backs, that the ones that can do that kind of stuff, stick their head in there when they're not getting the ball.
Yeah, I'm thinking about guys over the years like Harrison Jeffers, who every once in a while I would think, like, why did they not use this lightning bolt more? And then I'd realize, because if he's in a pass block or something like that situation, the lightning bolt is turned against his own quarterback. So there's a whole lot more beyond touching the football, right? And I would even say, to add to your point, there's a whole lot more beyond just physically being first willing to do it or second capable of doing it. How about between the ears, the wheels turning on the fly while the fur is flying, and there's so many things happening. You got to be able between the ears to process this stuff. And by the way, your decision-making is as important, or maybe the most important, in that pass blocking regard as anybody up there. Because how many times, Chris, have we seen, well, how about this example just hitting me in the face right now? Shannon Woods in College Station, Graham Harrell to Robert Johnson. And if I'm getting the running back right, I think it was Shannon Woods that was an integral part of making that play, picking up a blitz. But how many times have we seen the other? The running back picks up the wrong guy and his quarterback is killed by the dude that he should have gotten, or whatever. Between the years, I think, is also an understated aspect of this. And you know what? It may just be time that really improves your game in that regard. And Tahj Brooks obviously has the most of that on his resume. But there's a whole lot to consider aside from just actually being physically willing or able to do it. Grasping what they're asking you to do in such a quick-paced setting is no small task.
I also think that this position, Cowan, is huge from a production standpoint, and you really need, because Roderick was very productive. You need a lot of production out of this position in general because it takes pressure off of your quarterback.
Yeah.
Last year, it's like you see Donovan Smith and Tyler Shuck and even Barron, like, amongst the league, or the team's leading rushers. And all these people are like, don't run your quarterback, keep your quarterback healthy. It's on the running backs to be a bit better there and be a little more productive, and the O-line too, to kind of take some pressure off there, so you don't have to run the QB as much, maybe. So just wanted to toss that out too. Depth, not a problem. Proven depth is, as I said earlier.
Looking forward to seeing this play out. And Tahj Brooks, I think one of our favorite Red Raiders, certainly is a household name by now. And I know a lot of fans love to see him be successful. Make sure you've got triple watches this year whenever Tahj Brooks is in the mix, because it's going to be Taj time. Roley or Foley, whatever you're going with, it's all good. Chris, it was all good this week, man. Enjoyed it all the while. Appreciate all the time and the perspectives, and we'll gather again on Monday to do it again.
Happy weekend, people. Enjoy some sauce. Be careful. Keep hope alive. We'll talk to you again next week.
Valentino or Jack Daniels, whatever your flavor is. Hope it treats you right. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Do subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And we are back on the other side for another action-packed week as the run-up to football grows more and more intense. See you then on Locked On Texas Tech.